I give the CIA a total credit for sponsoring and initiating the entire consciousness movement, counterculture events of the 1960s.
Welcome back to Rise to Liberty podcast. Today we have a very special show for you, just like always. However, before we get into that, I do want to bring up our sponsor, which is Nadeau Shave Co. This is absolutely the best razor that money can buy. I stake my reputation on that, so make sure and go to NADEAUSHAVECO.com. Use promo code RISE15 to get 15% off at checkout, and that lets them know that we sent you there. That also helps out the show. All sorts of things. You will not regret using this razor. Now, today's show is it's going to be a heavy one. So this is going to be interesting, to say the least. However, I view this as incredibly important. Couple of things I wanted to address real quick before we get going into the show. One thing that I have seen mentioned before is that some of us researchers are exploiting victims. And I have to just come back and say that that is absolutely ridiculous. The entire reason that we are doing this is because of the victims. A lot of them can't do this themselves. Most of them have sadly passed away, or do not feel as though that they can come forward or feel that they can speak. And whatever it actually is that brings us to come in and research all of this, most of us are doing this for the victims. Another thing that I would like to address real quick is that what's kind of interesting is what this actually accomplishes, and particularly, like, why am I doing this? Well, one reason is that I feel as though by exposing these tactics, this is going to make it harder for these people to be able to do things like this in the future. This is incredibly important to me. There is the ability for them to cause immense harm to all sorts of people. And I want to see that stopped. I don't want to see that happen anymore. I don't think anyone else does either. So by exposing the tactics that they use, people are going to be more aware of how they were able to get these things done. And by doing that, that brings awareness, and this makes it harder for them in the future. So that is something I wanted to address real quick before we got into this. Now, today's show, we will be covering Dr. Elizabeth Loftus and her famous Lost in the Mall study. This is a continuation of my exposure of the False Memory Syndrome Foundation, and this is going to be part 6. Make sure and check out all the episodes that we have already done. You can pretty much just go to my channel or go to my X account, my Telegram. You can find them. They're all very, very accessible. Excuse me. So let's get into it, shall we? Oops. There we go. Okay, so False Memory Syndrome Foundation Part 6, Lost in the Mall. A study legitimizing false memory used to intentionally mislead understanding of memory and how it works. A false condition legitimized by MKUltra doctors, propped up by Mockingbird Media, used to silence millions of victims of sexual abuse. For anyone who wasn't here last episode, we had covered Elizabeth Loftus and kind of who she is as a person in the previous thread. And this was in relation to her testifying on behalf of Ted Bundy. Although she does say that she does not actually work on behalf of the defense, She wrote a book called Witness for the Defense. So I'm not exactly sure how she can claim such a thing that she does not work for the defense when her book is called Witness for the Defense. And so she testified on behalf of Ted Bundy, and she knew at the time that he was a suspect in the Ted cases in the Pacific Northwest. Tons of missing girls, and she knew full well that she was coming here to Salt Lake City to be able to testify on behalf of him, and he was up for aggravated kidnapping. And she even questioned if Ted would let her stay at his apartment. Not sure exactly what that means, but I think there's a lot that we can confer from that. So let's get into this, shall we? Elizabeth Loftus, renowned psychologist known for work on memory and its alleged fallibility. A notable case involving her testimony in 1979 in the Utah trial of Ted Bundy for the murder of two young women. Loftus testified about the reliability of eyewitness testimony, and this is actually my bad. This was not for the murder of two young women. This was an aggravated kidnapping charge, although he was suspected at the time of murdering two women. So that's actually a fault on my side. Ted Bundy is far from her only notable case. She has testified in over 300 trials, taking the position that memory and eyewitness testimony is unreliable, often taking criticism for aiding controversial defendants. So we are not going to go through all 300. However, what we are going to be doing is reading off just a few of, the most notable trials. So her more notable trials are as follows: the O.J. Simpson trial, 1995; the McMartin preschool abuse trial, 1980s through 1990; Rodney King beating trial, 1992. She was on the defense, which means she was on the side of the cops for that one. The Menendez brothers trial, 1990s. Oliver North and the Iran-Contra trial, 1989. Martha Stewart trial, 2004. Scooter Libby trial, 2007. George Franklin trial, 1990. Timothy McVeigh, the Oklahoma City bombing case, 1997. Bill Cosby trial, 2017. Harvey Weinstein trial, 2020. Yes, she was on their side. The Robert Durst trial, 2020. Ghislaine Maxwell trial, Ghislaine Maxwell, 2021. Paul Shanley child abuse trial, 2005. And the Bosnian War Crimes Tribunal. This is not a complete list by any means, but this is some of the more notable cases that she has been a part of. Her career has been marked by significant controversy, especially regarding her Lost in the Mall study, which is what we will be focusing on today, and her involvement with the False Memory Syndrome Foundation, FMSF, which she was a member of their scientific and professional advisory board practically from the very beginning. Damn mouse. And just for anyone curious, there she is. Let's go ahead and hide me for a second. So, there she is. And this is directly from the False Memory Syndrome Foundation website, which is still active. You can still go see it. Let's see. Let's just fix that right there. Okay. So this is, like I said, this is directly from the False Memory Syndrome Foundation website itself. Yes. I get that. Thank you. Okay. Elizabeth Loftus, PhD, is renowned for her groundbreaking work on the malleability of human memory. She is a distinguished professor at UC Irvine, where she holds faculty positions in the schools of social ecology, social sciences, and law. Since earning a doctorate in psychology at Stanford University, Loftus has published 22 books, including the award winning Eyewitness Testimony and 500 scientific articles. Her 30 years of research have focused on the misinformation effect, eyewitness fallibility, and the creation and nature of false memories. Loftus has contributed her expertise to hundreds of high profile criminal cases. Dr. Loftus is a past president of the Association of Psychological Science. She has received 6 honorary doctorates and has been elected to the National Academy of Sciences in a list of the 100 most eminent psychologists of the 20th century. The Journal Review of General Psychology placed Loftus at number 58, making her the top-ranked woman. In the repressed memory wars, Dr. Loftus has been a visible and vocal defender of those victimized by false memories of childhood sexual abuse. In her book, The Myth of Repressed Memory, with co-author Catherine Ketchum, Dr. Loftus succinctly sums up her view of the false memory phenomenon, which she describes as a worldwide crisis. No one should be surprised by Dr. Loftus's dedication to the myth of repressed memory. It reads, "Dedication to the principles of science which demand that any claim to truth be accompanied by proof." Ooh, interesting. Interesting. So, once again, dedicated to the principles of science which demand that any claim to truth be accompanied by proof. Isn't that interesting? Why is that interesting for those who don't know? So, for those who don't know, false memory syndrome is not an official condition that is recognized by the DSM, which is the diagnostical or the diagnostic manual used by psychologists to be able to help diagnose actual mental conditions. It's never been given as an official diagnosis. And in fact, with the help of Dr. James G. Frizen, we will be going over some things out of his book, The Truth About False Memory Syndrome. Let's see here. It's the one thing I did not have. Okay, it's right here. So, multiple personality disorder, MPD, would now be called dissociative identity disorder, which is an actual disorder that is within the DSM. It has been and is continually given as an official diagnosis, unlike false memory syndrome. So, when we are talking about truth and accompanied by proof, false memory has never been proven. In fact, it has been rather disproven over and over and over again, which is exactly what we are trying to do here, is to add to that. Multiple personality disorder would now be called dissociative identity disorder. The symptoms which define the syndrome had not changed since the previous DSM. 1. The presence of 2 or more distinct personality states. 2. At least 2 of the identities or personality states recurrently take control of the person's behavior. 3. Inability to recall important information that is too extensive to be explained by ordinary forgetfulness. 4. The disturbance is not due to direct psychological effects of a substance or a general medical condition. That is from the DSM-4, page 487, for anyone who would like to look that up. That is the definition of false or dissociative identity disorder. Moving forward, Loftus's most notable experiment, referred to as the Mall study or Lost in the Mall study, although the full name is the formation of false memories. Loftus aimed to prove that it was relatively easy to implant full or partial false memories of a childhood event that never actually happened. Participants were presented with a fabricated account of having been lost in a shopping mall as a child, alongside several true memories provided by family members. The 1995 study concludes that an entire false memory can be implanted simply by suggestion alone. Once again, this is actually not what was demonstrated. Let's see. Give me just a sec. Let's see here. Yeah, I know this is incredibly fascinating. Let's see. Something that needs to be pointed out, also, once again, from Dr. James D. Frizen. I believe that's how you pronounce his last name. Once again, The Truth About False Memory Syndrome. Perhaps the public is also being asked not to think. What evidence do they expect to find? Now, this is in relation to ritualistic abuse, which we will get into a definition here in just a little bit. Perhaps the public is also being asked not to think. What evidence do they expect to find of any large-scale organized cult? A manual on how to carry out acts of abuse? A nationwide computer printing or printout listing criminal cult leaders and their phone numbers? Written guidelines for covering up abuse more effectively? Please, federal officials, do not waste my money on research headed nowhere. Such acts are obviously illegal, so they will not be documented by perpetrators. There will be no paper trail. And I think that's something that's really important to point out for lots of abuse. So once again, the 1995 Lost in the Mall study concludes that an entire false memory can be implanted simply by suggestion. Like that's it. So I can just tell you that something happened to you, and it can be a complete lie. And based upon that, it is able to be implanted into your brain as if it were a true memory. So one thing I would like to cover, there is no such thing as false memory. Once again, from Dr. James Frizen, can a memory be false? These two words do not belong together. They contradict one another. If something is false, it cannot be a memory. People mistakenly think memories are an either-or thing, true or false. There is an element of distortion in memories, but if something is a memory, there must be truth in it. And that keeps getting left out of debates about false memories. If there is some distortion on the surface of a memory, we do not just throw it out. There is still something true in it. Memories always come from somewhere. If minds produce fantasies on the spot, that is not a memory. That is a pseudo-memory, which looks nothing like a memory. So this is an incredibly important distinction. A false memory logically could not exist. Those two words are illogical when put together. Yet, one thing I do want to point out is, I mean, I read her bio, right? Her bio from the False Memory Syndrome Foundation, and I mean, she's done a lot of work on this, right? Why would anyone, including the Mockingbird media, ever question somebody of this stature, of a PhD? Of course, they have a PhD. They would never lie, of course. Well, I think anyone that's lived through the last 5 years, almost 6 years, had to deal with the COOF, with the C-19. I mean, having to deal with any of that, I think it shows irrefutably that you can have a PhD, you can be of the elite echelon group of scientists and doctors and academics, and still be a complete fucking retard. But the thing is about the Mockingbird media is that they don't question PhDs. We hear things like the science is settled. Well, that's not how you do science. Science is continually being questioned. Science is literally nothing but questions. So there is no such thing as settled science. So why does any of this matter? 2 reasons mainly. First, because Mockingbird journalists will not, under any circumstance, verify any information coming from a source with a PhD, like I just said. Second, the study is not only described in virtually all introductory psychology textbooks, but is often cited by expert witnesses in cases involving allegations of childhood abuse that may potentially be based upon false memories, which once again don't exist. So this one study is not only the cornerstone of Elizabeth Loftus and her work, but it is the cornerstone to the house of cards that is false memory and the aforementioned False Memory Syndrome Foundation, of which both have been used to silence millions of victims of childhood abuse. Before we get too deep into this, I want to take the time to explain that every word, every screenshot was meticulously chosen. In this thread and any thread I ever do, any show I ever do, any article I ever put out, to paint this picture as clear as possible within the limitations of this particular format. This is more directed towards the threads itself. This thread and all others are meticulously researched in the hopes of simplifying complex subjects for any and all readers or listeners to walk away with a basic understanding or enough information to dig further. So let's really get into this, shall we? The 2019 paper Lost in the Mall, False Memory or False Defense by Ruth A. Blizzard looks at false memory syndrome, FMS, and parental alienation syndrome, or PAS, both used as defenses for parents accused of child abuse. The abstract for this paper is as follows. False memory syndrome and parental alienation syndrome were developed as defenses for parents accused of child abuse as part of a larger movement to undermine prosecution of child abuse. The Lost in the Mall study by Dr. Elizabeth Loftus concludes that an entire false memory can be implanted by suggestion. It has since been used to discredit abuse survivors' testimony by inferring that false memories for childhood abuse can be implanted by psychotherapists. Examination of the research methods and findings of the study show that no full false memories were actually formed. Similarly, PAS, or parental alienation syndrome, coined by Richard Gardner, is frequently used in custody cases to discredit children's testimony by alleging that the protective parent coached them to have false memories of abuse. There is no scientific research demonstrating the existence of PAS. And in fact, studies on the suggestibility of children show that they cannot easily be persuaded to provide detailed disclosures of abuse. This leads to a very important question. How often do children's reports of abuse turn out to be false? Because that is the argument, right? Is that a parent coached a child. And just a quick clarification, this is not to say that that has never happened, okay? That has happened. It's not exactly uncommon either. But in relation to something such as a false memory, that is once again not the same. A parent coaching a child into telling a lie is not a false memory. And this is what we're trying to make the distinction between is, does that child who was coached by a parent to tell a lie genuinely believe that happened, or were they just told to say this because otherwise they will get in trouble, or whatever abuse tactic the parent applied to the child to be able to get them to say this. Research has consistently shown false allegations of child sexual abuse by children are exceedingly rare. In fact, the opposite is true. You must ask yourself, how would a child even know of such graphic adult actions, some of which many adults are even unaware of, if they themselves did not experience them? This is not something that a child could just make up by themselves out of nowhere. Children experience and explain the world differently than we do as adults. So their disclosures may, over time, leading those around them to question if it may actually be false. Because the experience of disclosing and investigation can be so frightening, in addition to the abuse itself, many children may recant or even change their stories. They also might be intimidated as well, which is, of course, very possible, likely. It happens to adults, so why couldn't it happen to children? Children tend to understate abuse, in fact, or even flat out deny abuse. They do not falsify or over-exaggerate. This has been proven by what's called the Golden Standard Study. The Golden Standard Study was able to verify just this due to this particular case. The perpetrator in this case that the Golden Standard Study covers had videotapes of the abuse that took place, that he was being investigated for. So he actually videotaped the abuse. So the investigators were able to verify and compare what took place on the videotapes to what the children told the investigators. Not only did a majority of children downplay their abuse, some had difficulties remembering, and one child even lacked the ability to describe what had happened to them. Most interestingly, this investigation had very clear leading questions in the interview process of the children, which is a common argument for proponents of false memory. Even though there was clear leading questions in the interview process, there were still no false allegations. Misspelling there. Not false, but false. There were still no false allegations from the children. So, this is a big thing that pops up in the McMartin case. That's just the most famous one. It, of course, pops up in all sorts of cases, but people point out leading questions from the investigators. Many investigators are very inexperienced in dealing with children. I mean, certain investigators are trained specifically to deal with children, and even some investigators are trained to deal with children of specific ages, because even as you get younger and younger, the training to deal with them becomes more specialized. However, in the Golden Standard Study, among many other studies, this is just, once again, the golden standard. So even in a investigation that has clearly leading questions that would lead a child to the desired outcome from the investigator, I guess, if that's what the investigator would want to hear, which is also a weird argument to make. It's like, why does the investigator want to hear this stuff? They're not in court yet, right? So it's not like the defense team or the prosecution is coming in trying to say, like, we need this to, score the prosecution. No. This is the investigators trying to figure out what happened to find out if court is even, going to happen, if an arrest is even going to happen. So why would the investigators want to hear that? I think that's a much larger problem than, a lot of other things here. It's like, where is this huge group of people who want these children to tell them stories of horrific abuse? It's just absurd when you really start looking at this. So even with clear leading questions in the interview process, there were still no false allegations because children just don't make this up. This is embarrassing. This is humiliating to children. And children are a lot more emotionally available and open. I mean, they haven't become so cynical quite like so many adults have. And so shame hits hard. It hits really hard for children. So, and then this is from the actual Golden study itself is where these screenshots came from. I've also provided the link to the information on the Golden study itself, so you can go verify the information for yourself. In a more recent study, investigators reviewed a case notes of all child S abuse reports to the Denver Department of Social Services over 12 months. Of the 551 cases reviewed, there were only 14, so 2.5 instances of erroneous concerns about abuse emanating from children. These consisted of 3 cases of allegations made in collusion with a parent. 3 cases were an innocent event, which was misinterpreted as S abuse, and 8 cases, 1.5% of false allegations of S abuse. There's the citation for that, anyone who is curious. Let's see. After reviewing the empirical literature concerning the frequency of false allegations of S abuse, Mickelson and Hale and Emson concluded false allegations of S abuse by children and adolescents are statistically uncommon, occurring at a rate of 2 to 10% of all cases. 2 to 10%. So 10% is high. So once again, that is not to say that this doesn't ever happen. That has never been the claim here on this channel or by myself. That is not to say that false allegations never happen. That would be an absurd claim, right? But it's the fact that false allegations are statistically uncommon. 2 to 10%. So even just average that out, and 100% of the cases, we're still talking about a lot of cases here that are, so that the overwhelming amount of cases, out of 100 cases, 2 to 10%, that's still 90% of cases where it is actually true. So yeah, 10% is shocking. 90% is more shocking. 90% of true cases is more shocking. Mickelson, and yeah, there is the citation for anyone curious of where that information came from. Feel free to go look it up yourself. It is all there in the thread. And of course, the Golden Standard study in this area comes from Sweden. The case involved a lone perpetrator who pled guilty after videotapes of his abuse of 10 children were found by authorities. Because of these detailed videotape recordings, researchers knew exactly what happened to these children and were able to compare it to what the children told the investigators when they were interviewed. The researchers found here, uh, the researchers found here was a significant tendency among the children to deny or minimize their experiences. Some children simply did not want to disclose their experiences. Some had difficulties remembering them, and one child lacked adequate concepts to understand and describe them. Despite the fact that some of the interviews included leading questions, there were no false allegations. Once again, there is the citation for the information. Go check it out yourself. But there it is in black, white, red, and yellow. Once again, there is the link for anyone watching on video. Now, regarding the original 1995 study, a major criticism was the small sample size of only 24 participants in total. And this is supposedly used as a representation of society as a whole. Now, granted, scientific studies do, only use a small number of people. However, 24 participants saying that this is what applies to everything and this is like the study. 24 people is what has decided the fate of millions. And this is supposedly used as a representation of society as a whole. According to Lynn Crook, in her book, False Memories, the first 6 participants were dismissed. So there were actually more than 24 participants in the study in the first place, but those 6 were dismissed. Why would Elizabeth Loftus dismiss the first 6 participants of her study? Not only that, but what that means is that the criticism of the small sample size of only 24 participants was actually 30 participants. So there were more. And for, a first study on something like this, 30 participants isn't exactly bad, but it's not exactly good either. A sample size of this in a scientific study would require more studies to come later for it to really say like this is legitimate. And then eventually a meta study would take place with all of those studies and figure out averages, all of these different things. However, 30, and then you just get one study and then that's the truth, is absurd. That's just not how scientific studies work. That is not the process in which you do this. You do not start with 30 and then at the, after the study has started, just dismiss 6 participants. James Cohen, a student of Loftus, was assigned as chief co-investigator for the Mall study, reported in his honors thesis that 6 subjects had completed the study, and all subjects were able to correctly identify the false memory. So, what this means is that in the study, these 6 participants that were dismissed were able, they were given multiple memories, and they said, find the fake one. All 6 of them pointed out what the false memory was. They said, it's that memory, that's the fake one, that's the one that you tried to tell me was real. That's not true. Cohen doesn't exactly say that this is why they were dismissed, but I think it's safe to assume that that is exactly why they were dismissed. Because based on those numbers, I mean, the first 6 would completely destroy this study. And we'll get more into that with the remaining 24. You'll see why she had to get rid of 6 to be able to make this make sense, and for her to be able to use this for how many ever years it's been since 1995. 20 plus years. So, and this is from Lynn Crook's book, False Memories. Fantastic book. In fact, let's see here. If this is a subject that anyone is interested in, it is a wealth of knowledge. It is a wealth of knowledge. So she says, and this is the beginning of chapter 8, which is backstage at False Memories. Lynn says, my attorney disposed Elizabeth Loftus on January 24th, 1994. I read the disposition after the trial and stopped at, and this is a quote between, I believe, Lynn Crook's attorney and Loftus. Loftus says, there were 6 subjects that finally finished the first study before the research assistant, James Cohen, left. Page 60, lines 13 and 14. Levy. Are you using those first 6 subjects as part of your study? Page 60, line 19 through 20. Loftus, no, not the first 6. Why not use the first 6, Miss Loftus? Not using the first 6 subjects who completed a study suggested a problem. I knew from my grad school days that researchers cannot simply drop subjects like that. Curious, I telephoned Cohen in August 1996. He said Loftus called him in and suggested his leadership role in the mall study might be too much for him. Jacqueline Pickrell, another undergraduate, was assigned to head the study. Reporting flawed data. This is also from Lynn Crook's book, False Memories. There was another problem with the study. The 24 subjects each received 4 stories. And so this is Lynn Crook explaining how the study is structured. This is an incredibly important information to be able to understand exactly how the study took place, which will help in everyone's understanding and why all of this is such a problem. There was another problem with the study. The 24 subjects each received four stories. So 6 subjects would have to say they were lost. Instead, 5 subjects in the published version said they were lost. Page 723 in the 1995 study. The study had failed statistically by 1. Surely the psychology community would want to know this. I invited Martha Dean, PhD, a psychologist from Australia I'd met through Treating Abuse Today, the co-author of review of the mall study. Martha encouraged me to take the investigation as far as it would go. She suggested I request the annual reports Loftus had submitted to the University of Washington's Human Subjects Review Committee, the HSRC. We found an oddity in the final report, dated June 1st, 1994. 24 subjects had been run. About 8 to 9% have formed false positive memories. Another 10 to 15% formed partial false memories. 2 subjects thought they were lost. So 8 to 9% is 2 people out of 24. So you take 24 people, 2 to 9%, that's 2 people. Okay. So 2 people out of 24. Elizabeth Loftus is reporting this to the Washington's Human Subjects Review Committee, the HSRC. So this is an official authority on this that would accept her scientific study and would get it out, agree. They would review it, all of these different things. So Loftus, in her annual report submitted to the HSRC, says 8 to 9% or 2 people had full uh, fully formed false positive memories. So 2 subjects thought they were lost. There must be some mistake. This report made no sense to us. Surely someone would have noticed if the study had failed that badly. We questioned the report in the article for ethics and behavior and left it up to someone else to figure this out. Now, in all the research I have done, I have found zero explanation for this. I have also found zero explanation for how 2 out of 24 people having formed a false memory means that false memories exist all the time, because we're talking 2 people out of 30 participants, by the way, not 24. She only reported 24. So she knocked off 6. Big problem, red flag. Reports 24. Out of the 24, only 2 people. That is, like Lynn Crook points out here, a complete failure of this scientific study. By 1994, the study was completed and Loftus presented the results at a conference. The conference is practically non-existent at this point. I was not able to find any transcription or anything, although there are some reports on this. Her findings were as follows. About 10% of adults, 2 of the 24 subjects, will come up with a specific elaborated memory. Mind you, this is actually much smaller than 10%, as the very first 6 subjects of the study itself were dismissed. So she is claiming here, so she gets the scientific study done. It gets accepted, all of this stuff, for whatever reason, nobody picks up on it. And then she reports at a conference in front of all of her colleagues and tons of other doctors. The world, I imagine media was there, some media. She finds that 10% of adults, based upon 2 people, that 10% based on 2 out of 24 people, will come up with a specific elaborated memory. 2 out of 24 is actually much smaller than 10%. That's math. I'm sorry. Sorry, not sorry, actually. This is less than 10% of people come up with a false memory. So this is from the New York Times archives. This was written by Daniel Goleman, May 31st, 1994. In a scientific nod to the frailty of memory, neurologists and cognitive scientists are coming to a consensus on the mental mechanisms that can foster false memories. Ooh, that's some good propaganda right there. The leading candidate is source amnesia, the inability to recall the origin of the memory of a given event. Once the source of a memory is forgotten, scientists say, people can confuse an event that was only imagined or suggested with a true one. That's interesting, isn't it? That sounds pretty damn good. The result is a memory that, though false, carries the feeling of authenticity. Maybe this now shows you how impactful propaganda can be, because that's exactly what this is. This is propaganda. This is not what they proved. This is not what the study proves. This is not anything. This is very, very good writing. This is very good writing that is presented as an authority because it comes from the New York Times. The average person is not going to be questioning the authority of the media. Anyone watching this channel, I would sincerely hope that you would know enough at this point. And if not, maybe we really should cover Operation Mockingbird at this point, which is the whole reason I keep saying Mockingbird Media. But I mean, the media is bought and paid for. Plain and simple. It's just a lie factory. That's what it is. And even if this author truly believes this, because I mean, the doctors are lying about this too. Dr. Loftus is lying about her study that it was so successful. So even if the author is not on the take and he genuinely believes this, he's not questioning the doctors because they have a PhD. They're an academic. They're a scientist. Why would you ever question somebody of such esteem? Why would you ever question the authorities? Don't ever question the authorities. Just get back in line and do as we're told, right? So, my personal opinion is that not only is somebody like Daniel Goleman implicit in all of this, he is bought and paid for, whether he knows it or not. He is part of the Mockingbird media. This is the mainstream media. And if you're ever curious about that, look into the origins, the origins of the word mainstream. Things get really weird when you start learning where that word comes from, what it actually means. So the mainstream media, the New York Times, is pushing the success of the false memory, yet not recognized by the scientific community. The people that are at this conference do not recognize false memory. It's never been given as a diagnosis. Two words together, or two words that do not belong together because they are illogical. They don't make sense. It's never been given as a diagnosis. It does not exist. And yet, here is the New York Times talking about this is what a false memory is. It's not true. This is a blatant lie. This is a blatant lie. Of course, I have provided the link for anyone who would like to go check this out. Please do. Please double check, verify everything I say. I would love for you to. Please do. So there are major issues regarding the outcome of these two participants out of the 24 total reported participants. Okay. So now we're really getting into it because there were 30. She dropped 6. Dr. Loftus dropped 6 participants. Okay. All right. That's like, that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen at all. Like any legitimate scientific study, which, most I pull into question, but let's go with it. You don't drop 6 participants after the study has started unless there is extenuating circumstances, and in which case you should probably just start over. But she dropped them. Okay, fine. So 24. 24 is what we're working with. Now, 2 participants are reported in the official study. Go read the study itself. Only 2. 2 people out of 24 actually had a false memory installed. Okay. This is what the study claims. 2 out of 24 actually had a false memory. Now, there are 2 major issues with these 2 people. What exactly is that? The first participant is described as convinced, is described as convinced. However, according to Dr. Loftus herself, Fieldman and Deschel, I'm not sure. The subject recounted this subject, so subject number 1, recounted to the researchers what appeared to be an actual experience of getting lost at a Kmart, and then went on to correct the false memory she was told. Page number 723 of the original 1995 study. Page 723 of the original 1995 study. So, participant number 1, one of the 2 that this entire thing is based on. One of the 2 actually confused the pseudo memory, the fake memory that they tried to install. She confused that with a real memory of getting lost at a Kmart. Then she corrected and said, nope, that's the false memory. And she was correct on which memory was the false memory that they tried to install. So they didn't actually, like, what? They didn't actually install a false memory then, did they? If she was like, oh shit, I actually did get lost. It was at a Kmart, not a mall. And it's like, oh shit, that actually happened. Oh, well then this thing about the mall, that's got to be the fake memory. That's what happened. They reported it as a win. So the first participant had actually remembered a real story of her being lost in a Kmart, therefore not a false memory. So we're now down to one person. Down to one person who supposedly had a false memory installed, which is what false memory is based on. The entire myth of false memory is based on one person. Or is it? So, the second participant says the subject, quote, embraced much of the information and expanded upon it. This does not appear to be the case. The second subject is described as misled. Yet, when she was asked to choose the false memory, she chose the mall memory. Page number 723 of the original 1995 study. So it appears that no false memory were planted in the mall study at all. None of them. It failed. Every single participant found the false memory. They were unsuccessful. Not even one person had a false memory installed in them at all. False memory does not exist. False memory has never been given as a diagnosis. The scientific community does not recognize it. Only charlatans, liars, and dare I say, people that are acting on behalf of some sort of evil could only genuinely think that false memory does exist. This is a lie. It does not exist. Even by the original 1995 study, it doesn't exist. It's not real. Stop believing in false memory. Anyone who does was lied to. Not sorry. Deal with it. The reality is, false memory does not exist. What does exist is multiple personality disorder, which was renamed dissociative identity disorder. Okay? False memory syndrome. Ergo, the false memory syndrome foundation is fake. It doesn't exist. So why would all of these people that we've covered in other episodes of this, why would all of these esteemed doctors and academics come forth and pretend on something? You can't tell me they never read this study. You can't tell me that. I don't believe that. Well, okay, maybe some did. Maybe some just took it on faith. It's entirely possible. But nonetheless, all of these MK Ultra doctors, all of these intelligence-tied doctors who did incredibly terrible things to people, incredibly disgusting, horrible things to people, backed up a complete lie. And if people just read the actual literature instead of listening to the Mockingbird media, people would know that. But that's why we're here. So it appears that no false memories were implanted or planted in the mall study at all. In December 1995, the mall study was published. The 2-subject finding reported in 1994 became 5 subjects in the published study. I never found an explanation for this. So once they finally published the study and it went out to the public, and this was after academic review, and it was all good from the academic side, right? And it was pushed out to the normal people, to the lemmings, the serfs, to us underling, or not underlings, to all of us normies, you know, when it was finally pushed out to the general public, The two people that they said that they based the false memories on just turned into 5 magically. It just poof, 5 people. Literally no reason for this. Nobody has ever given a reason. There's no explanation for this anywhere, but it went from 2 to 5. Loftus and Pickrell reported of the 24 total, 19 subjects correctly chose the getting lost memory as the false one, while the remaining 5 incorrectly thought that one of the true events was the false one. So this is what they reported in the study. Yet, even the conclusion of the study is contradicted by what was said on page 723. Nobody cared to point that out? Okay. The findings continued. These findings reveal that people can be led to believe that entire events happened to them after suggestions to that effect. Loftus and Pickrell, page 723 of the original 1995 study. In 1996, Loftus began criticizing the character rather than the ideas of those who questioned her ideas. This has continued to this day. And I imagine if this probably ever reaches her or her circle, the same thing would happen. My character, some ad hominems would be thrown my way instead of actually addressing any of the information that I've brought. Any of it. I'll get pointed to. Not any of this information. None of this will get talked about if it ever makes it that far. Once again, I have provided all of the source information for this. Please go double check it yourself. I have no interest in hiding where I found this information. None. None at all. Please go read it. Don't take my word for it. Since 1999, it has been deemed unethical in scientific settings to use deception as a way to receive results. And as you step back to look at the implications of this study and what it has done, the very fact that the study was based upon deception does seem fairly unethical. They lied to these people in the first place. I mean, they knew that they were being lied to, but nonetheless, that's still using deception. They tried tricking them into believing something that was fake. So even conducting this, the way that it was done in 1994, started in 1993, I believe. Well, I mean, it started a little bit before that, but nonetheless, in the 90s when this started, the way in which this study was conducted is far outdated today. It is highly unethical how it is conducted, and yet she still uses it. Still uses it to this day to, once again, mind you, testify on behalf of people like Ted Bundy, Ghislaine Maxwell, Bill Cosby, and she's saying that the survivors and the victims of these terrible fucking people, nope, their memories were fake. Their memories of their abuse was fake. That's what she's using this for. $600 an hour. Might be a little bit more, but that was the last I heard. $600 an hour to testify on behalf of the defense. But I bet, she might want to stay at some of their apartments like she did with Ted Bundy. Cheap shot. Another major concern and criticism for the mall study is that being lost in the mall is a pale comparison to the types of traumatic events this has been used against, such as the S abuse, YouTube, such as the S abuse of children. Being lost in the mall and sexually abused, particularly by a parent or trusted authority figure, is in no way an equal comparison. You can't compare the fucking two. You just can't. You just can't. They are not the same. Critics like Blizzard and Shaw, 2019, say that it's inapplicable to recovered abuse memories, which are often repeated and traumatic, and linked to it defending accused parents via false memory syndrome. A major aspect of the study that gets overlooked is a clear lack of definitions. There is absolutely zero definition for a full or partial memory or false memory. So there's no definition in the original 1995 study. There is zero definition for a full false memory or a partial false memory. That I've given a definition once again. I gave a definition out of this book right here. Right there. I gave a definition exactly of what dissociative identity disorder, formerly multiple personality disorder, is. In the study that is used to say that false memories exist and it happens in this many people and look at how this happened and blah, blah, blah. It exists. It's real. It's real. It's real. That study doesn't even have a definition for a full or partial false memory. So what the fuck were they even studying in the first place? No definition. The Lost in the Mall study in recent years has been replicated, addressing all the major criticisms. The findings was that they got the exact same conclusions as the initial 1995 study. How the fuck could that be possible? I'm sorry, but this is just like really stressing me out. Like, this subject it gets me so heated because it's just so blatant. It is such a blatant lie. It is such a blatant lie. So they replicated this study recently too. I think it was 2021, 2022 maybe. And they got the exact same results as 1995 after they addressed the criticisms, right? Sounds like a piece of fucking propaganda. How could you get the exact same results? There were no results. They didn't implant any memories. They didn't implant any. None of them were fake. Every single one of them pointed to a false memory. So, in fact, saying that out loud, I actually believe them. I guarantee they got the same results as the 1995 study because the 1995 study was bullshit. But what conclusion is that? That there were no false memories? Because when you look at it, that is the result of the first study. One aspect of this new revamped study must also be addressed. The purchasing of science and falsification of scientific studies, or junk science. Below, I have included 4 examples of junk science. So even though the study has been replicated again in recent years, who is to say that this is any more legit than the first? Now, we're going to go through a couple of cases of junk science real quick. Science can be purchased, just like politicians and just like the media. Okay? These are all proven also. There's an entire website. It's called dishonestyofscience.com. Okay? It's like a watch group or whatever that points out where the funding comes from for this science. Okay? But let's talk about a couple of really well-known cases of science being bought and paid for. The tobacco industry and smoking safety. Okay? Claim. For decades, tobacco companies funded studies to downplay the link between smoking and lung cancer. Research was designed or interpreted to suggest that cigarettes were safe or that health risks were exaggerated. Details. In the mid-20th century, companies like Philip Morris and R.J. Reynolds supported scientists who produced results questioning the causal relationship between smoking and disease, despite growing evidence to the contrary. Internal documents later revealed selective reporting and suppression of unfavorable findings. Glyphosate, Roundup safety by Monsanto. The claim, the scientific claim, Monsanto, the maker of herbicide Roundup, allegedly influenced studies to affirm its safety despite cancer concerns. Details: research funded or ghostwritten by Monsanto claimed glyphosate was non carcinogenic, countering independent studies linking it to cancer. Lawsuits later revealed potential data manipulation and pressure on regulations like the EPA, which they are getting their fucking asses sued over this. In fact, I believe the largest lawsuit is done and they lost their ass because they lied. They bought the science. They paid for the fucking science. They wrote the science themselves and said, this is official. This is official. Sugar industry and heart disease. Claim: the sugar industry paid researchers to shift blame from heart disease to sugar consumption to dietary fat. In the 1960s, the Sugar Research Foundation funded Harvard scientists to publish a review in the New England Journal of Medicine that emphasized fat and cholesterol as the primary culprits, minimizing sugar's role. Declassified documents show the industry influenced the research focus and conclusions. So the entire fucking thing. Minnesota coronary experiment: butter versus margarine. The claim: the study, conducted from 1968 to 1973, was accused of being buried because its results contradicted the prevailing diet heart hypothesis that saturated fats cause heart disease. Details: funded partly by the National Institutes of Health, NIH, which they're on a great track record recently. NIH partly funded the experiment that tested whether replacing saturated fats like butter, or polyunsaturated fats like margarine, 2 molecules away from plastic, mind you, reduced heart disease. The results showed no benefit and even suggested harm from eating margarine. But the data was not fully published until decades later, allegedly due to pressure to align with low-fat dietary recommendations. And, I mean, do we need to talk about the case of lead? I mean, scientists fought in the 70s so incredibly hard to say, no, lead, not poisonous to humans. The fuck it wasn't. Same thing with asbestos. Same thing. They fought and said, no, it's not harmful. It's not harmful. It's not harmful. Well, it's harmful. So, yeah, they replicated the study. But think of the implications, okay? Think of the actual implications of this. So, if false memory turned out to not be true, so there's motive, there's a vested interest in keeping this lie going, okay? If that's not real, if, like, holy hell, does the entire Tower of Cards come down? Like, I mean, we're talking decades of abuse being excused in courts of law. Okay? I mean, it turns the entire judicial system into a fucking joke. Okay? Based upon junk science, which, once again, you know, this right here, this part of the thread is why all of this is so important to me, because this is so incredible. It is such a blatant lie. So, what is the ultimate conclusion? When we are discussing false memory, we need to be very clear about what we mean. The topic is far more complicated than a single thread on X can explain. However, when it comes to Elizabeth Loftus and the idea of what she has been pushing as false memory for the better half of 3 decades, It is clear that this idea in and of itself is false. It is fake. It does not exist. It is a lie. More importantly, what she has been able to do with her Loft in the Mall study is the most troubling of all. She has silenced the voice of millions. Silenced the voice of millions, whether that be a silencing of them in court, in the media, in their communities, or in their own mind, making it so that they never come forward to begin with. I hope that this thread, I hope this thread, that it not only exposes people to consider the source of who is exposing, I meant espousing, who is pushing this data, but some very simple facts about the ideas that she pushes. So I hope the whole point, I hope that this thread exposes Loftus and the terrible person that she is. She is a shit person. I mean, maybe at this point she has genuinely lied herself into believing that this is real, or she is just genuinely that shitty of a person. I could believe both. Either way, she's still wrong. What she is doing is wrong. What she has done is wrong. But I hope that by doing this, this exposes this. Because this is absolute bullshit. Now, there were a couple of things I wanted to go through because we are done with the thread at this point. Couple of more things I just wanted to go through. We will be getting into this more at a later date. Let's see here. Let's see. Okay. How is a repressed memory different from a dissociated memory? Repression and disassociation are mechanisms the mind uses to block painful experiences. Both mean to forget. In repression, the forgetting happens gradually. In disassociation, it happens right away. Now, we got to start thinking about like some of the people that come out and attack this. Okay, there are people out there like such as the Grey Faction, the Satanic Temple, that come out and defend things like false memory and say things like dissociative identity disorder does not exist. That is bullshit. Let me tell you, if you're on the side of Satanists, whether you're religious or not, that's not a good fucking side to be on. It's just not. And I just, if you were trying to, you know, here's what the Satanic Temple says. They say things like, we are here trying to save people from bad doctors. Okay, fine. I understand that. People should want to save people from bad doctors, which is exactly what I'm trying to do. But then why turn around and deny the existence of dissociative identity disorder? That doesn't fucking make sense. That's just why I don't believe them. It's like, I'm willing to give a chance. I'm willing to believe somebody if that's what they claim, but then they do something else that just, I think, entirely disrupts their claim to begin with. And that's one of the things. It's like, well, guess what? Dissociative identity disorder does exist. False memories don't. And anyone who actually does the research on it, which hopefully by somebody like me doing the research and making the information a bit more accessible, you know, you guys don't have to spend the time that I did to get all of this. It's all right here. This is why I'm doing this. This is why I'm providing this. This takes an hour and a half of your time to watch me talk about this thread. Or go read it yourself. Go click the links. Seriously, that's why I put it out there. Repression is an active process. When material enters the mind through the customary pathway, it gets recorded in the conscious mind. Despite the accuracy of the recording. It is subject to interpretation and reinterpretation over a period of time, so that it will fit in better with the rest of the person's life within a few months or years. It can be modified enough so that it becomes an acceptable part of the person's inner autobiography, and the original event becomes hard to remember accurately. So, a repressed memory is something that you change yourself. Once again, a repressed memory is something that you change gradually or that you gradually forget about. A disassociated memory is something that you forget about immediately because you disassociate. It's entirely different than repressing it. Everyone can repress. Everyone can also be subject to disassociation. There are different kinds of disassociation as far as the type of trauma that you experience. However, repression is not the same. This is also another common tactic. The people who are critical of DID, MPD, or people who are proponents of false memory usually push. They try to confuse you in the difference between repressed memories and false memories, and they try to muddy the water, poison the well. Okay? They try to get you confused about exactly what we're talking about. This is clarification. This is why we need to do this. This is why it's important. Disassociation is different from repression in these ways. Disassociated events tend to come back suddenly rather than gradually. Excuse me. With very little distortion, with lots of detail, and there is often a sense that this, quote, didn't happen to me. When the original event is shocking, entry into the mind via the usual pathway is circumvented. The incoming data is detoured right away and remain set apart from everything else. The newly disassociated material has no point of contact with other information in the mind. Disassociation is involuntary. It just happens without thinking. A person does not choose to disassociate an event. Rather, the mind just reacts to the pain instantaneously without giving the person a chance to react to any other way. The brain senses that the incoming material is overwhelming. Repressed memories usually come back in the first person. They seem like things that happened to me. Disassociated memories are altogether different. They seem like something that happened to someone else, an account being told in the third person. They have never been part of the person's conscious history, or seem to not be part of the person's conscious history. Now, this is important, and this is what we're going to address before we get out of here, because we'll wrap up soon. I didn't want this to be a super long stream. Pseudo-memories. When people describe to me what they mean when they use the term false memory, it turns out that they are describing something therapists often call a pseudo-memory. When people are suggestible, they may believe that something about them is true simply because somebody told them so. Such a person could conceivably believe untrue things under the guidance of a therapist. I stress the word conceivably because I am not aware of any such person. Therapists with standard training in multiple personality disorder / dissociative identity disorder assessment will not make the mistake of diagnosing a suggestible person as a disassociator. Assessment includes looking for dissociative symptoms which are present and seeking evidence that these symptoms were noted earlier in the client's life. If dissociative behavior patterns are present. And if those patterns have been evident in the past, it should be understood that memories of childhood abuse are likely to appear in adulthood. However, if a client describes abuse memories without evidence of lifelong dissociative behavior patterns, a pseudomemory may be indicated. False memory, so fantasy and therapy. False memory fighting groups have charged that clients uncover abuse memories because the therapist uses fantasy material incorrectly. Regression therapy, trance states therapy, and hypnosis induced therapies are terms used to misinform the public about what really goes on in therapy. Disassociation and repressed memories make their way from the unconscious into the conscious awareness through predictable patterns, and the therapist does not make it happen through mind control. Therapist does know what patterns of emerging memories look like and can create the proper conditions for memories to surface safely. Let's see, just making sure I am getting everything that is important. Let's see. Okay, so this is a little bit later on in the book. This is let's see, what was the name of the chapter? This is how do people discover what is accurate about memories? There's a lot of stuff that we don't have the time to cover, but there is something very important to cover here. Of particular concern to me is the position taken by a false memory fighting group or somebody like the False Memory Syndrome Foundation. They state that they know, without asking the client or the therapist, that a memory of a traumatic experience is objectively false if recovery of the memory results in personality and lifestyle changes. Do they think people are supposed to stay the same? If a traumatic experience is handled properly in therapy, changes in personality and lifestyle are precisely the outcome hoped for. Recovery from traumatic memories should produce changes. Adults are expected to create new directions in their life when they overcome their problems, even if their families do not approve. Now, this is where we're gonna end on this. This is just something I wanted to end on. I think it's a good place to kind of wrap this up. Oh, actually, no. There's two more parts that we've got to go through. We'll make this quick. Multiple personality disorder, or using the newer term dissociative identity disorder, is not an illness. MPD/DID is an effective defense mechanism. It protects in many ways and has often been necessary for the person's survival. I want to help correct the widely accepted but incorrect perception that it is nothing more than a problem. It is accurate or actually a solution to a problem. It is a cure. It is not a curse. It is a gift to deal with difficult life circumstances. It is not crazy. It is a proper reaction to crazy life events. It is adaptive, not destructive. Dissociators develop a system of personality parts to fend off danger and to keep life steady. The system regulates which parts are best suited to rotate out at any time so the system can deal with practically anything. Let's see. The father of modern psychology, Dr. Freud, gave us a good start in understanding people's minds. As a pioneer, he covered much new ground about 100 years ago. But even a good pioneer sometimes loses his way. I think that's a bit more generous than the author should be here, but hey. But even a good pioneer sometimes loses his way. As I understand it, Dr. Freud seemed to believe his clients were telling him the truth at about the turn of the century. A few years later, however, after his clients told him about their memories of abuse, of familial abuse, he came up with a new diagnosis: hysterical neurosis. It appears Dr. Freud's powerful influence has had far reaching effects on the way people have looked at recovered memories. The memories which he found hard to reconcile with the way he viewed things were put into the hysterical category, which is what therapists who have been trained in his tradition have been doing ever since. He honestly concluded that memories of incest or childhood abuse were the product of a hysterical mind. That sounds all too familiar today. If a memory is disturbing to the listener, it goes to the hysterical imagination/false memory category. Unfortunately for the one with the memory, the listener stops listening too soon and does not hear the things which would lead to the conclusion that the memory may be true. Now, finally, oh, there it is. So we are going to finish on a couple of, actually, I think that is it. Yeah, that's it. So that is where we are going to end this tonight. Hopefully everyone that's watching actually learned something from this. Hopefully you got something from this, and hopefully I have been able to present this information in a very astute and very concise way. Hopefully we've made some headway. Hopefully this gives people something to be able to share and get this out there. Like I said, go take my thread, go use the links, go read them yourselves, do whatever you need to, but understand exactly how important this is. Understand how much of a fucking lie this is. And because of the lie, people have been damaged because of this and have been unable to heal from some of the most traumatic experiences of their entire life. And that I find absolutely unacceptable. Not to mention, this protects the predators. This allows them to continue abusing or to never face the repercussions for what they've done. And that I also find not only reprehensible, but I find that unacceptable. So, on that note, we are going to get out of here. I would like to thank all of you for tuning in to another episode of Rise to Liberty. Let me just pull up a couple of things real quick. I should have had this pulled up, but hey, this is just kind of how we do things around here sometimes. Let's see. And let's see here. Okay. Sure. Let's close that out. Okay. So one thing I want to do is let everyone know, if you would like to support what I have going on, I do have an option for you, for those who want to financially support what I have going on. Feel free to go to risetoliberty.com/coffee. And that will bring up the buy me a coffee. I need as much caffeine as possible to be able to do this research. So if you want to pop on over, give me a one-time donation, or you can turn it into a monthly reoccurring donation. I would deeply, deeply appreciate it. However, those who cannot or do not want to support financially, I get it. You know, times are tough. However, cash is king. But for those that can't or don't want to, there are other options. What you can do is you can subscribe, you can follow, you can share, hit the like, leave comments. All of these things, they're free. They take you just a minute. And they help. They help, you know, so much. They help just as much as the financial. Also, if none of that is interesting, but I don't know, you still got a couple of bucks burning a hole in your pocket, head on over to risetoliberty.store. I just dropped a couple of new designs. Check these things out. I love this. Absolutely love this. Mind control, an American pastime since 1953. I got sizes from small all the way to 5XL. Colors, black and white. So there are two versions of this t-shirt. The only difference between them is the quality of t-shirt. So if you want a high-end version of the t-shirt itself, then get the more expensive one. So it's got the big mind control on the front, and on the back, it says "Rise to Liberty." You can also pick up a aluminum water bottle. You can also get the new mind control design on an 11-ounce ceramic coffee mug. So go check all that stuff out. Make sure and head over to our sponsor, Nadeau. I don't know. I can never remember. Nadeau Shave Co. That is NADEAUSHAVECO.com. Use promo code RISE15 to get 15% off. And I think other than that, oh yeah. Okay. So the next show, I was supposed to do a show on Tuesday. That didn't actually end up happening. So we are here today. Now, this is the last part. Part 6 is the last part of the false memory thread that I have out right now. I am working on part 7. Part 7 will be covering the argument that has kind of spawned from the false memory stuff, which is this is a witch hunt, you know? All of these people accusing us of abuse. It's all a witch hunt. It's not fake. This is just like the Salem witch trials, blah, blah, blah. I'm tackling all of that. I'm bringing my A game. It's definitely taken me a few weeks, but I want to put the effort into it. I want to be able to have the best sources possible and be able to present the best information and the best arguments moving forward. So we won't have another false memory syndrome episode until that comes out. However, on, I guess, Sunday, I'm not sure exactly what we'll be covering Sunday. Tuesday, we will be back to the Laurel Canyon conspiracy stuff. So the music from the 1960s, plus all the LSD use, the drugs, all of that stuff, how that affects us, and, you know, back to mind control, stuff like that. So keep an eye out for the, I guess it's going to be part 7 of the False Memory Syndrome Foundation thread that will be coming within the next week or two. I'm almost there. It's going to be good. Ooh, it's going to be good. And other than that, so keep an eye out. Sunday will be the next stream. Whatever exactly we cover, probably the Laurel Canyon stuff or something related. If not, either way, it will be fun. Sunday, and then starting again next Tuesday. So on that note, we are finally done. We are out of here. So if my mouse will work. Okay. So on that note, we are out of here. Until next time, stay free, my friends.